Let's move on with a question from Kevin. Kevin asks, what category of things do you track on your Trello board? Well, as Kevin is hinting, and we've talked about many times before on this show, I organize my tasks on task boards. I happen to use Trello. There's other software that can do the same thing. Here's my setup. I have a unique board for each of my different professional roles. So right now, for example, I have a board for my computer science research. It's my researcher role. I have a board for my administrative and teaching roles as a professor. So I sort of separate out those two things. There's a lot of work involved with getting classes together and other sorts of administrative details of being a professor. That's one board, a separate board for the research I do as a professor. And then a separate board right now for my work as a writer. I'm actually thinking about perhaps differentiating that into a board that focuses just on writing and another board that focuses on all the details of running the media, the fledgling media empire that is what I facetiously call Cal Newport Studios. And I haven't yet, but I might. There's other times I've had other boards. I've mentioned before during my stint as the director of graduate studies for our department, that got its own board because it was a whole separate role. So I have a board per role. There are some standard columns I use on almost every board. On almost every board, I'm going to have a column for things that need to be processed. So I don't even really know how to get my arms around this thing that just fell on my plate. Someone just came and said, hey, we have to figure out how to promote this new minor that we're going to be, launching as a program. And I don't even know what that means and how we promote it, but I don't want to keep track of it in my head. I have a column where I can put that card. And that's a column I can come to and say, when I'm doing my weekly plans, I need to start processing some of these things, like figuring out what it means and making them more specific. I usually have a column for definitely do this week. So when I'm doing my weekly plan, I'm going to move cards onto that column that I definitely want to do this week. I always have a waiting to hear back from column. This is one of the secrets to my success. And by success, I mean success in trying to prevent undue anxiety. If I am waiting to hear back from a colleague on something, an administrator on something, I sent a note to a dean, and I need to make progress on this thing, but I'm waiting to hear back from this person. I don't believe in just saying, well, they'll email me back at some point, and that's when I'll remember to work on this. I put a card in that column under the proper role. Okay, I'm waiting to hear back from this person on this thing so I don't forget it. And again, these digital cards you can attach information to, so it gives me a place to keep track of all that information. So that's been useful. If I have a regular meeting set up associated with a role, so for example, when I was a director of graduate studies, I would meet with the program coordinator every week. I would meet with the department chair every week. I would have a column to gather things to discuss at that next meeting that we would have. This is another hack that goes a long way because it reduces a tremendous amount of asynchronous back and forth digital communication. Because your instinct in the moment, let's say you're in a director role like I was. This thing came up. A student asked me something. I don't know the answer. My program coordinator might know the answer. The instinct is to say, let me just shoot off an email because you know what? In the moment, now it is off your head. It's out of your mind. This is obligation hot potato, throw, tag, you're it. The problem is that email is going to come back. And they're going to say, oh, what do you mean by that? And they're going to have to email them back and they're going to email you something else. And now you have an asynchronous back and forth conversation going on that's causing context shift after context shift. You feel good in the moment when you throw the obligation hot potato to someone else. But in the end, you're still going to end up burning your hands because this thing is going to be thrown back and forth, back and forth. So what's better to do is say, let me just put this note in the column for discuss at next meeting. And a bunch of stuff builds up in that column. And when you get to that next meeting, you go through it and you make progress and solve all these problems. It's out of your head and there's no asynchronous back and forth. So that works for me as well. And then sometimes I will have columns that are specific to large or ongoing initiatives or projects. So there's a back burner column where it's just a bunch of stuff that's uncategorized. Sometimes I will add a column if it's podcast, for example, in my writer board. This is an ongoing project. There's a lot of things that I have to do for it. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, so why don't I put those into its own column? But really, this has to be something that's pretty long-standing. Otherwise, I just keep these tasks showing up in the back burner. The very final piece of advanced advice I'll give about using task boards is I consolidate. Digital cards on digital task boards are versatile. So if there's 10 small tasks, let's say associated with getting my original podcast studio up and running. I don't want 10 small cards. I will probably have all of those tasks and the affiliated information on one card, and I will highlight in the card description, what's the next task. So I can move this card onto my I'm doing this week and maybe put a note on it like, okay, I want to get 2 more things done from this list because I don't want 500 little cards on these task boards. So if you consolidate, they really don't get out of control. All right, so that is how I organize my task boards.